In 1095, Pope Urban II received messengers from Alexius Comnenus, ruler of the Eastern Christian Byzantine Empire. Alexius requested military aid from the west against the Seljuk Turks, a powerful Islamic people who had conquered much of Byzantine Anatolia and now were on the doorstep of the empire's capital of Constantinople. Therefore, Pope Urban launched the First Crusade, calling on the knights of Western Europe to march to the aid of the Byzantines. Many leading noblemen raised armies, including Godfrey of Bouillon, a descendant of Charlemagne, Raymond IV, the wealthy Count of Toulouse, and the southern Italian Norman adventurer Bohemond. The first Crusaders arrived at Constantinople, where they swore to hand over their conquest from the Muslims to Emperor Alexius, so long as he should provide them with military aid. In 1097, the Crusaders besieged Turkish-held Nicaea and captured it for the Byzantines. Then they marched east, across Anatolia, defeating the Turks at the Battle of Dorylaeum. Moving south into Syria, they arrived before the massive city of Antioch, which they besieged over a grueling 8 months. A famine spread in the army, and the Byzantine contingent withdrew. Finally, in June 1098, Bohemond struck a deal with an Armenian guard on one of Antioch's towers, and the Crusaders penetrated and sacked the city. With Alexius's contingent gone, the Crusaders established their own government in Antioch under Bohemond. After defeating a Turkish relieving force from Iraq, the Crusaders moved on to Jerusalem, which they captured in 1099. To protect the Holy Sepulchre, the site of Jesus Christ's burial, the Crusaders established the Kingdom of Jerusalem, with Godfrey of Bouillon elected as ruler. In 1144, the Kingdom of Jerusalem lost one of its vassal cities, Edessa, conquered by the powerful Turkish emir Zengi. In response, Pope Eugenius III called for the Second Crusade. Two of Europe's kings, Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany, raised armies. While marching their forces separately through Anatolia in 1147, Louis and Conrad were both defeated by the Turks in battle. The remnants of their armies limped on to the Kingdom of Jerusalem, where they joined with the local Latin nobility in an attack on Muslim-held Damascus, which ended in failure. Thus, where the First Crusade had been wildly successful, the Second Crusade failed. In the late 12th century, the Muslim emir Saladin managed to gain control of both Egypt and Damascus, making him the most powerful enemy yet faced by the Kingdom of Jerusalem. In 1187, Saladin invaded Crusader territory and conquered Jerusalem, Acre, and almost the whole of the kingdom, spreading sorrow throughout Europe. Pope Gregory VIII called the Third Crusade. Philip II of France and Richard the Lionheart, King of England, raised their forces and sailed east. In 1191, they arrived at the wealthy port city of Acre, which the local Latin Christians had been besieging for 2 years. Saladin was present with his army, attempting to break the siege, but the Crusaders took the city in July. Philip now returned home with his army, leaving Richard the Lionheart to carry on the crusade alone. He marched south along the coast toward Jaffa, defeating Saladin's army in the Battle of Arsuf. Again, he defeated Saladin in 1192 at Jaffa, securing that city for the Crusaders and forcing Saladin to agree to a peace treaty. Richard decided it was not tactically feasible to attempt to take Jerusalem at this time, but as part of his terms with Saladin, he secured access to the holy sites for all Christian pilgrims. Thus, the Third Crusade was very successful, retaking many important cities from Saladin and reestablishing and securing the Crusader kingdom. In 1198, Pope Innocent III called the Fourth Crusade. His intent was to capture Egypt, one of Islam's wealthiest territories, making it possible to retake Jerusalem. The high-ranking lords Boniface of Montferrat and Louis of Blau emerged as the Crusade's leaders. They commissioned Venice to build a fleet large enough to sail to Egypt. By May 1202, the fleet was complete, but the Crusaders found they had overestimated the number of men joining the army and were short on funds to pay for the commissioned fleet. To recoup Venetian losses, the Doge of Venice, Enrico Dandolo, asked the Crusaders to capture Zara, a Christian city formerly under Venetian rule, which had come under Hungarian power. The leaders of the Crusade agreed, though many knights quit the army since they viewed this diversion against a Christian city to be a betrayal of the Crusades' holy mission. After the capture of Zara, the Fourth Crusade was still short on funds when they received a plea from Alexius IV Angelus, a Byzantine prince whose father Isaac II Angelus had been deposed from the throne of Constantinople. Alexius asked the Crusaders to help him retake his throne, promising the full support of the Byzantine Empire in the crusade against Egypt, including troops and supplies. Boniface, Louis, and the Doge of Venice considered this offer seriously, which caused more Crusaders to abandon the army. Since a diversion to Constantinople seemed a worse violation of their vows. Nevertheless, the Crusades' leaders agreed and took up Alexius's cause. They attacked Constantinople in 1203, capturing the city and crowning their ally as Emperor Alexius IV. However, internal Greek factions kept Alexius's rule unstable, and soon there was an uprising in which Alexius himself was strangled to death at the behest of the Greek nobleman Murtzuphlus. Furious, the Crusaders stormed Constantinople a second time. They defeated Murtzuphlus and sacked the city. Pope Innocent III was enraged by both the attack on Zara and the sack of Constantinople. He excommunicated all of the Crusaders who had participated. The Fourth Crusade never made it to Alexandria. Instead, they elected Baldwin IX of Flanders as Emperor of Constantinople and set about consolidating their newly won Greek territories, which they hoped would allow them to ultimately finance an attack on Egypt.